looking you right in the face.
The Parliament has passed our superannuation reforms, ensuring that the superannuation system is fair and sustainable for all Australians. We're making the 45th Parliament work.
Joining me is the panel, former Labor Minister Grahame Richardson and former Labor campaign guru Bruce Hawker. Bruce, how big a win is this for the government? Will the people be cheering?
They're dancing in the streets all around the country. That's why there were such big traffic jams all the way into the studio tonight. It was incredible. Look, I think they've had something of a win on the superannuation debate, but Labor's amendments would have saved another $1.4 billion over the forward estimates, and that's not to be sneezed at.
Not saved, cost us money.
They would have saved.
It's a tax hit.
They would have saved on the because they're going to reduce the amount of money that people could have on non-concessional contributions, for example. So look, it's something. It shows that they're getting somewhere, but I wouldn't be getting too excited about it. They've still, as you said, got $1 billion debt and a deficit that's doubled since they were elected. They're hardly in a very strong position when it comes to crowing about their financial record.
No, but Grahame, it's true that they've had some wins, right? They got those packet of budget savings through, the omnibus ones. They got these super things through. They're getting. They got the registered organisations bill through earlier. I don't know how much this matters to the public, but whatever. I don't know that they're getting the reward in the polls for any of this. Why not?
Well, I mean, let's face it, mate. If you've had a whole year, as Turnbull's had, and that's all you can say, then, you know, you haven't done very much. And on the same day as they're crowing about the super deal, which, by the way, could have been a lot better, wealthy retirees are still doing too well. I wonder, do we take any notice of Standard & Poor's saying unless you do better on debt and deficit, we're going to take away the AAA rating? And that's on the same day. I mean, what they did today has not changed the outlook. It is not earth-shattering. The earth has not moved, and we're still in strife on debt and deficit, which, as Bruce points out, has got worse since they got elected. So they've had a win, and I'm glad of that. I'm glad there's some reform on super. That's good. Not enough, but it's part of the way. And so I take my hat off to them. Good luck to them. But there is so much more to do.
Yeah. Bruce, I think Grahame sort of nailed it a bit there, where here's the problem. It's actually a tax hit, despite you trying to call it a savings. It's a tax hit, and no one likes a tax hit. And the only way that you see the benefit of it is if the debt and deficit go down. And as Grahame says, same day, Standard & Poor's warns the AAA credit rating could be at risk.
Yep.
Unless they get that down and some real measures of it, all this really, is, electoral terms, doesn't count for much.
Well, that's exactly right. In 2014, I think the deficit was around about $10 billion. Then in 2015, it had blown out to $25 billion. And at last count, it was $37 billion. So it just keeps growing and growing. And that's against the rhetoric that they've been going on with about budget crises and emergencies and the like. It just doesn't sit particularly well with the reality, and that's their challenge. And they're going to have to...
No, unfortunately it does. The actions don't match. That's the problem.
Well, OK, I'll take that point. The actions don't match. And you know, they've got some things through the Senate. Well, you know, they've had some advantage there, I guess, in dealing with one nation. I mean, that's a fantastic operation, isn't it? They're back to where they used to be back in the 1990s, falling apart. That Rod Cullerton, they reckon that if he's going to be replaced, it's going to be by Sideshow Bob. And but Sideshow Bob...
I don't think so. I think they're really determined not to let that happen.
Sideshow Bob ruled himself out.
But Grahame, I still think that Labor, and I hear that Bruce has been doing the loyal thing here for Labor, but Labor had a real hide today, attacking the government. Oh, you're putting the credit rating at risk, and oh, you know, your management of the economy. My God, who got us into this mess in the first place? Who's stopping $20 billion of savings right now?
I think the 6 years of Labor government in terms of finances were disasters. They did poorly, but they've got a right to have a go now because the Liberals, for all the rhetoric, have done considerably worse. So if you were Bill Shorten, you'd be doing exactly what he's doing, saying, well, what I'd say is, listen, we mightn't have done very well, but you're a lot bloody worse. That's what I'd be saying. I think Labor's never properly acknowledged that there were mistakes made during that period, that deficits did blow out, that the debt did blow out. Labor's never properly acknowledged it. And the problem is, you know, people work you out. The mob will always work you out. And so it seems to me that when everybody knows something and you refuse to acknowledge it, then people mark you down. And I think at some stage, someone in the Labor Party's got to make a speech that acknowledges that maybe things weren't all that perfect in the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years.
Well, I think that's a fair comment, but they have got worse, as those numbers that I cited before are a testimony to. You know, the deficit has continued to blow out. It's not as if this government has reined it in. You know, they've done anything but rein it in. And frankly, you know, I know you go on about the tax concessions that should be given to business, but that's $50 billion that have to be found somewhere as well. So, you know, wherever you look, you're not looking at a government that seems to be particularly serious about getting the books under control. And as Grahame said, that is a responsibility that is laid squarely and fairly at their feet and not the opposition's.
Well,
they judged
I don't know if that's
Labor in
entirely true, Bruce.
2013. They judged Labor in 2013, and you know, and we were defeated. Now it's the responsibility of the Turnbull government to say, well, it's up to us to get these things sorted out, and they're not doing it.
No, there is a very big difference. When the Labor Party was in power, you had in the Senate the Liberals and the Nationals demanding less spending, right? Now you've got exactly the opposite. You've got exactly the opposite. And I think we're in a new paradigm when actually two governments are ruling this country. One in the lower house, wanting to cut spending, and one in the Senate, wanting to stop the cuts to spending and spend more. Grahame, this is the problem, is that we are in, no matter what the government really wants, you can't actually cut spending much with this crew in the Senate.
Well, I think it's going to be virtually impossible. But I mean, because, you know, Xenophon essentially is a populist, so's Lambie. There are enough numbers there to make it well-nigh impossible for the government on the big things. Mind you, the government has no heart for it anyway, so I'm not sure we're missing out on that much. One of the difficulties here, of course, is that neither the Labor Party nor the coalition really want to talk about big cuts because they're scared of the electorate. I think what's happened here is, you know, because of things around the world and orange by-elections and all the rest of it, people are very worried in government about ever upsetting anyone. I mean, I think we're getting to the stage, you know, where almost government does nothing because they're too frightened to move. Doesn't matter who's in power. They're frightened to move because they're frightened of offending.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Bruce. And why today did Scott Morrison twice refuse to rule out implementing, say, a sugar tax? Now, why would you do that? I mean, that's just going to offend people.
Yeah, well, that seems to me like a very silly idea. I saw that Barnaby Joyce was pretty scathing of it. But, you know, that goes to Grahame's point. You know, there's this fear of offending anybody out there. And, you know, governments are elected to govern. And when they do go about trying to do that, then they actually do get some grudging respect in the electorate. The thing about this government is that they're not doing that, and they can blame the Senate all they like, but the electorate at the end of the day will hold them responsible, just as they hold every other government that doesn't control the Senate, and most of the governments don't control Senates, for their failure to actually implement proper policy. This is a responsibility.
No, but I just wonder, Bruce, I wonder whether we're actually in a different paradigm. Grahame, like Bruce is saying, you know, it's all on the government. But we had a previous Liberal government, Tony Abbott's, where he did try, like a bull at a gate, to get the big cuts through. He was smashed for being so stupid as to bang his head up against a brick wall. The Senate kept saying no. Now I've got a government that's going entirely the opposite way, not pushing hard enough, and it too is getting smashed for a lack of leadership. It seems to me we're in a complete dilemma. You can't do anything.
Well, you can if you're a really good, inspiring leader with some courage, some guts and some brains. It seems to me that Australia's crying out for someone to do that, crying out for someone who'll take them on a journey, but take them with them. Not simply tell them what they're going to do, but take them with them. Persuade, cajole. You know, old-fashioned persuasion often works, but we won't try it anymore. We're paralysed by fear, and that's both sides. If you look at Labor's programs, and I must say for an opposition, they've done pretty well at putting out plans, much more than what Tony Abbott ever did. You've got to say that theirs too are pretty damn weak. No one will stand up and announce that they're going to do what we need to do.
Grahame, and this is
No, I think that's absolutely right. I've got to go, gentlemen. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. Grahame Richardson, Bruce Hawker, wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you.
Hang on.